As we know that the COVID pandemic has had a profound impact on education, from the shift to e-models and the impact that it's had on students' mental health. Yet we're so inspired by the stories of how students, teachers, and education leaders have responded to the pandemic, and we want to share those stories. I'm very, very excited to be speaking to Vice Chancellor at the University of Pretoria, Professor Tawana Kupe, and he will share some insights as to what his experience has been leading, one of the best universities in the continent.
Not one of the best universities on the continent, the best university on the continent.
So now going back to the topic where we're at, COVID-19, could you take us back pre-pandemic? What was the predominant mode of education? How were things operating for you?
Yeah, largely I think across the world, including at UP, the framework was contact teaching in large classrooms, in small classrooms, in tutorial rooms. At UP, what had started to happen even before the pandemic was that people were expected to go online before class and required to go online after the lectures. And in class, some online resources might be referred to or even used. We were already using an element of online, what we call hybrid or blended teaching and learning. But education is social in nature. We are a contact university. That is what COVID disrupted.
What were some of the learning management systems that were used for more online transition?
I think it's a good question. So we went 100% online, as many others around the world did. But our students and our staff were familiar with the working online. We use a system called Blackboard, Collaborate. But I think what's important to point out that you need a device, you need data, and data is not cheap in South Africa. In 2019, we put in 100 million onto our IT system. That enabled us to create a functionality on our learning management system where students could go on without data. So in both years of COVID, 2020 and 21, our teaching and learning management system and how it's run, configured, and its functionalities enable us to have what we call live synchronous lectures. In other words, people go to class online the same time they would have been gone, and the lecturer is there live. It's not a recorded thing. If you miss the lecture, didn't understand something, you can still retrieve it. But there are things you can't do online. A medical student has to touch a patient. So when COVID rules allowed, people went into some small group contact classes on a rotational basis. Our philosophy is that the best form of teaching and learning is hybrid or blended.
What challenges did you experience, though, with going more online during this time, or even now as you're using this hybrid system? Sometimes
we found that when in periods of high traffic, people might be kicked off doing a quiz or an assessment or submitting things. So in that case, we allowed people to apply for data. Even after that, by the way, to go online, a person has to have a laptop or an internet-connected device of one kind or another. The question was whether every student had one. If we went online without those people, without those devices, they will be left out. So we created a solidarity fund where even ourselves, the staff members, donated our salaries, delayed the buying of new laptops or computers. There were some students living in areas where there's no connectivity, there's no electricity. Those who really come from homes where it's unconducive to study, stay back. So we kept back some 300 students during lockdown. They were locked down at the university. Then those students who had gone away but could not have connectivity, we sent them hard copy material. Someone would phone them every week and give them the lessons over the telephone, what we call telephone tutoring. Yeah, so then there was another problem of students who decided to cheat using the online methods. Plagiarism also grew. And people also were caught having collaborated in trying to answer exam questions. What they didn't know is that if all of you produce the same answer word by word, even when it's wrong, something is going on there. So, and this is a major global concern and a concern by many people around the world that people might be passing because they are using technology also to teach. Remember, the technology is neutral. If you are a crooked person, you can use it to crook the system. If you are not, your morals, your ethics around you not.
What would you say are any notable benefits to online learning that you've observed?
So I think one of them is that capability to record. Remember when you go to traditional contact classes, unless of course you use your own phone behind the lecturer's back to just record the lecture. Typically the lecture is delivered in person, you listen and take notes. But with online, the lecture is also recorded and you can replay it afterwards. And I think that contributes to students' ability to comprehend, to go back to things that they didn't grasp properly. The other benefits, which are not necessarily immediate, but will go forward depending on how universities choose, is that you don't need a lecture room, and most of us don't have, including UP, a lecture room that can take 1,000 students in economics 101. Now you could teach all of the 1,000 or the 3,000 in one go, and it's also recorded. More people could access education because of the lack of the fact that you've dealt away with the capacity issues that relate to space.
How did the students react to this online learning?
Some students found it quite convenient, but some did not appreciate that, because some things you better understand if the lecturer is there. Some students also thought that, why should they pay the same fees? I think people confuse the fact that it's not any cheaper. Remember, I mentioned already the 100 million way to spend. I still have to pay the lecturer the same salary. I can't say, now you teach online, I'll pay you less. No, it doesn't work like that. And also facilities, he said, lecturers recording stuff, the cameras that are playing, the electricity that is running, none of the costs went away. Actually, it's going to be more expensive. But over time, in general, I can say most students had a good experience. Am I just saying so because I'm the vice chancellor? No. What we did was surveys of both lecturers and students throughout the semesters to see what people were struggling with, what their experiences were. In general, all of the surveys showed a comfort with the system and ability to use the system.
What was the general sense from the lecturers? Were they also quite comfortable with the system?
Yeah, they were quite comfortable. Quite comfortable does not mean 100% of all of the lecturers, because it is different teaching online than walking into a class and standing there or sitting there and doing your own thing. We have a Department of Education Innovation at UP. So it supports people in learning how to teach online, because the skill is not transferable.
Given the challenges that you've listed, how would you give advice to other institutions, other universities?
Well, investment in the IT technology obviously is important. Continuously upgrading, of course, the technology, because technology is fairly expensive and there are upgrades all of the time which require money. And also selecting the right learning management system is very important. The learning online also should actually be something that needs to be taught. Teaching students also how to relate to online material, then training your academics in teaching, and also having the support capacity, the technicians and education innovation department, which is not just a technical part, is a philosophical part. All of those things can't be taken for granted.
Now I just want to briefly just pivot to the students themselves and mental health. We saw globally and in South Africa, we've heard so many accounts of how the pandemic affected students' mental health. What impact did you as a university, as an institution, observe in your own students?
COVID hit people very hard. The anxiety about the uncertainty. Will I complete my degree? I'm struggling with this. Typically, I would have gone to a group discussing with my friends and classmates after class for things I didn't understand. Now I'm on my own at home. Many students reported anxiety, depression caused by the uncertainty and the complexity, and also having to adapt to a new mode of learning, which is 100% online. So what we did actually is to use the same online platforms to increase the capacities for counseling. So students could actually confidentially seek for online counseling, where the camera could be on or the camera could be off. We also support from other groups that are good at this. So the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, for example, SADC, we have a partnership with them also to augment our counseling capacities. Then also we create a chatbot called Scooby, a chatbot that actually does counseling for students. Scooby might say at the end, no, I think you should talk to one of our university online counselors. Some students didn't want a counselor or Scooby or SADC. They wanted to talk to somebody who's experiencing the same problem. So there are WhatsApp groups as well where students could give each other peer support. One need to be really empathetic and sympathetic and understand that this was beyond normal. So a greater understanding of the context from which the students are coming from and what, even in good times, how they might be impacted by the situation. Also providing courses on and support systems for transition to university is a form of empathy, if you like. And then emphasizing to students that if you find yourself having problems, don't think it's just you. Seek help and talk to others. So I think that universities have moved forward from the old idea that you are now here, you all passed, you entered it. If you fail, it's your own fault, into understanding that performance is also contextual and that things might not be as easy as they look. A new dawn has come into the space where the future of teaching and learning is hybrid or blended. And, the future of learning is also, teaching and learning is also high flex. Innovation and creativity will define the future of teaching and learning.